At the beginning of my sewing journey just 6 years ago, I didn't even know how to make a napkin. But now, I make almost all of my clothes from scratch. And it all started with learning the basics. Hi, my name is Robyn Burgess. I'm a sewist and founder of Styles and Seams, a fit-obsessed sewing blog and indie pattern business. I started sewing 6 years ago after decades of struggling to find clothes that fit my 6'2" body, my budget, and my bold, cheerful style. Now, I am proud to say that I have not bought clothes since 2018. Everything I wear, I create from my imagination and my sewing machine. If I can learn this craft, so can you. So let's dive in. Let's take one side of our pattern and put the other side of the pattern away. Because we've made this pattern about 3/8 of an inch bigger than our zipper, we're gonna sew up to the zipper on the seam allowance, but not through this metal. In order to sew the zipper, you're gonna need a zipper foot. The key to a zipper foot is that it has these indentations so that the needle can go really, really close. As you're running the zipper foot down the machine, it's gonna go along the side here and the needle can go up pretty close to that zipper. A regular presser foot sticks out all the way through that width, and so it's not possible to get so close to the zipper teeth. Let's switch out the presser foot. The other thing is that once I put the zipper foot onto my machine, I need to move the needle position. My default needle position of my machine is over to the left, but I need it to be in the center in order to really take advantage of the zipper foot. So I'm just gonna switch that to the stitch where the needle positioning is in the center. I can see here on the pattern of my machine, the location of that needle positioning by the dot that's just right in here. So I know if I press this button and go up to 1, it's gonna move it over to be centered. I also do like to double check. And so before I put all of the pressure of the machine going fast, I like to turn my hand wheel and just watch where it goes and make sure that it's not gonna hit the presser foot when I put the needle down. Let's line it up so that the outside edge of the zipper matches with the outside edge of our pattern, with the right side of the zipper facing the right side of the pattern. And then I'm just going to adjust it so that we have 3/8 of an inch seam allowance at top and at the bottom. If you wanted to, you can measure that onto your fabric and make a little mark. Do that if you can't eyeball it. Now that I know that I've given myself enough clearance on both sides for my seam allowance, I'm going to take some pins and I'm going to pin the zipper to my pattern. We have the zipper face down against the pattern, and what we want to stitch on is this edge. So I've just put it under the presser foot and I'm into the seam allowance back here. And I have the zipper foot as far over as I can go. This stop is gonna make it a little bit difficult to actually stitch super close right there, but that's perfectly okay. I don't like breaking needles and there's a lot of metal here. So once again, I'm gonna use my hand crank to put the needle down safely and make sure it's in a good position before I start sewing with my presser foot. And again, first thing we're always gonna do is go forward 3 stitches, go back 3 stitches and backstitch. So now that we've backstitched, we're ready to sew. So go slow and be careful around your zipper pull. All right, see, it's gonna get a little stuck, so I'm just gonna lift it up over it. You might have to maneuver a little bit, it's okay. All right, we're done. So I'm just gonna snip these and get rid of any loose threads. So I'm gonna take my other side and I am going to basically do the same thing by putting the right sides together. So you can either put it on top this way or you can flip it over and put it on top like this. You want your pattern to match up so the curves are in the same direction. So once again, I'm gonna give myself the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance on either side of the zipper pull and stop, and I'm gonna pin this to the fabric. So we're about to do the exact same thing, but on the other side. And now because we're on the other side, instead of starting with this zipper pull, we're gonna be ending with this zipper pull. So just make sure that you have the other side of your fabric out of the way and that the seam allowance isn't showing either. And let's put this back here in the seam allowance. We haven't moved our needle at this point. We haven't moved our stitch settings at this point. So we'll put the needle down. We're gonna backstitch at the front, stitch, and then backstitch at the end. If you get a little stuck, it's just because the presser foot is getting stuck against the stop here. So just lift up a little bit and put it back down and try to get that on top of it. Just do a little practice and make sure it moves. All right, we're now at the tricky bit next to the zipper pull. I'm gonna try to go as far as we can and just finish it out in the seam allowance. Backstitch. Lift up our needle, lift up our presser foot, and clip. By the way, these little thread snips are super cheap and my favorite thing to have at my sewing machine because they're easy to hold in your hand while you're working, so you can go fast. Let's put our sewing machine aside, grab our iron for the next step. As we're pressing it open, you'll see it's open with the zipper in the middle. So we're gonna press it down this way. Be mindful, I'm using a metal zipper, which means that it is going to get hot. You can burn yourself if you press it super hot and then you touch it. So we're not gonna touch the metal after I do this. So that's the wrong side. And let's do it on the right side as well. Now it's pressed nice and flat. You can see our beautiful zipper. And on the wrong side, it's nice and open. Let's give the metal a second to cool before we go back to the sewing machine. So we were just introduced to the zipper foot, and now I want you to meet the edge stitch foot. The edge stitch foot is used for edge stitching, which is sewing a line of stitching close to a seam line. Generally speaking, an edge stitch is 1/8 of an inch away from a seam line, while a top stitch is 1/4 of an inch away from a seam line. Both are basically top stitching, but by definition, they're slightly different. We're gonna use the edge stitch foot so that we can sew a line of stitching close to the seam line here so that we can make sure that our seam allowance and our zipper tape stays away from the zipper as we have the clutch. The other thing that this will help do for us is finish the edge of this fabric. Because you'll remember, we didn't do anything with this denim and you can already see it's fraying even though we only cut it a few minutes ago. I'm gonna do a row of edge stitching and then we're gonna come back and do a row of top stitching, which I think you should try your hand at just to see how it works. Let's switch out our presser foot, put this one on. I don't usually turn my machine on and off, but I do try to keep my foot far away from the pedal whenever I'm changing the presser foot so that I don't accidentally put the needle down into my finger. So the purpose of the edge stitch foot is to effectively help you get that line. So it's gonna go right in this divot of the seam line between the zipper teeth and this denim that's pushed back. And right now, because I'm in the center and I have the edge stitch foot mostly closed, they're basically in the same line. But remember, I wanna stitch 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. So I'm gonna move the position of my needle by switching down to the 0, 0 stitch so that I can get it 1/8 of an inch away from the edge. And let's make sure that we have enough of your fabric underneath of the needle. A common problem with sewing is trying to start sewing exactly on the very edge of the fabric, but that's not gonna work for you because the feed dogs need a little bit of something to grab onto. So the reason why we have a little bit of seam allowance is so we can start in from the edge and push it back past the needle a little bit so we have something for it to grab onto and push through the machine. I'm just gonna fold this up a little bit and I'm ready to start stitching. Just a word of caution, as you get close to the zipper pull, you might get it caught a little bit in the edge stitch foot, so go a little bit of slow and make sure it can find its way without problem. Might need to lift up a little bit to get it over the hump. And if it still won't go forward, just help it out a little bit. All right, we're at the end, let's backstitch. Let's pull it off and cut it. You can see how that edge stitch foot helped us to achieve a perfectly straight line. Now, if I had to do that freehand just with like a normal, like universal foot, I wouldn't have had that level of control. But because this little edge went down in here, it kept it perfectly straight for me. So that's another really good hack for beginner sewists or for someone who's more intermediate even. Use your presser feet to help you keep those straight lines. I'm gonna take and do it with the other side now and go a lot faster. So I have my row of edge stitching. Now again, I challenge you to go and do another row of top stitching. Top stitching, again, is 1/4 of an inch away from the edge, so it's just another 1/8 of an inch away from your first row of stitching. I'm just gonna widen out my edge stitch foot a little bit so that I can get that 1/4 of an inch. Press it down just to confirm I like the width. All right, there we go. So let's just clip all the threads off. All right, our edge stitching is all done and we got some nice, slightly imperfect top stitching, but it keeps our fabric from fraying too much because we have these rows of stitches securing it. So the last thing to do with the zipper is just cut off this little excess that we have at the top and the bottom because we don't need it.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to like and subscribe to stay up to date on all of our latest videos.